Hey guys, it's Corey. Today we are going to be looking at foundation names. So I was looking at my foundation collection and just like foundation matches in general, and there are a lot of foundation shade names for me that I have no idea what the heck they are. Like ecru, alabaster, okay, porcelain, I do know bisque. There's a lot of strange words describing foundation names. So I thought in this video I could just go through and maybe take a deeper look at foundation names in general, mostly for my skin tone, but also taking a quick glance at medium and darker skin tones just to see like the general theme of them. I wonder just what ecru actually is. To open up this video, let's actually take a look at my foundations and see what the common themes of the names actually are. So names I'm going to disregard would be something like pure numbers, so just 100 or the MAC system like N1 or NC1, whatever. These types of foundation names I am going to completely ignore so that we get descriptive words to like judge what are these things, because numbers often make a lot of sense and words are often a lot more confusing. So here are some foundations I have. I have alabaster, don't know what that is, ivory nude, porcelain. In NYX I've got a couple porcelains, just light, fair beige from Tarte. I've got a couple fair beige things, fair, just neutral, more fair from Milk, light beige from Dior, light medium cool from Estee Lauder, and freaking Breeze from Clinique. Like, what? Breeze? Okay. Obviously, if I'm like Breeze and Clinique and I go to buy any other Clinique product, I'm fairly sure I'm going to be Breeze, although it's not always guaranteed that you're going to be the same shade name, even between like one brand name, which is kind of confusing, but at least it gives you an idea of like where you could be. But between brands, there is tons of like uncertainty. Like if I'm porcelain in NYX, am I porcelain in L'Oreal? Probably not actually, right? The past couple of years, 2017, 2018, have been really big for foundation ranges. So you've really seen a huge expansion in both the light, the dark, and the medium ranges of foundations. I'd say mostly the darker shades have kind of had this like revival, this renaissance, this like maybe even first time being represented. With influencers like Jackie Aina and Alyssa Ashley, and of course Rihanna and her Fenty Beauty kind of really raising awareness that not all of these skin tones are represented. Being fair, I've never really had an issue finding a foundation. I guess that's not true because personally I've had problems finding a foundation. I think everybody who's as pale as me, not trying to like hype it up, but like when you're fair, and you're really fair, you tend to know that you're on like the light spectrum of the foundation, and when you first get into foundations, you tend to just grab the lightest bottle. It's safest. It's usually a safe bet, especially when there's like limited shade ranges, medium, light, dark. You're just kind of trained to always grab like the lightest thing, and that's probably going to work. As shade ranges become more nuanced, suddenly grabbing the lightest bottle of foundation isn't always the safest choice. Maybe it'll be too light for you, or maybe it will just look off on you. Like maybe it is just strangely yellow or strangely pink on your skin tone. I know for a while there, I was always really confused why the lightest shade was like, it looked too dark on my skin. And it's not because maybe it was too dark, it was actually because the undertone was just like not the right color. Maybe it was too yellow, so I would just notice this like color on my skin and I'd be like, well, this is too dark. So everybody has their own like personal foundation journey, and like from what I've read on Reddit and like beauty boards and just heard from other people, I think my growth through foundation selections has kind of been a pretty standard trajectory, where now I've gone to Sephora, I've gotten color matched. I have a much better idea of like what my undertone is. If you're curious, I'm neutral, slightly cool. And when I went to Sephora, I was actually matched with 1R03 on their Color IQ system, which you can see here. So when I need to go get a foundation, I have this like pretty accurate guide for what color match it's gonna be, and it can suggest a bunch of different colors. I actually went onto Sephora just to look at names of foundations matching my color IQ, just to see what shade names were out there. So the things that I'm about to list are my exact color IQ match on Sephora's website. I also hopped over to justfindnation.com, which is like a foundation matching online site that gives you suggestions if you plug in some colors that will match for you, just so I had a better idea of drugstore plus Sephora brands. These are descriptors that I would guess are probably going to be an appropriate match for my color. I got about 40 color match results, and the most popular descriptor of my foundation was just fair. Maybe very fair, maybe neutral fair, maybe warm fair, and maybe light fair, which is kind of funny because I'm like cool fair, I would say, like if you were just talking to me. But those are all of the names that came up when describing my foundation for fair. Number 2 was ivory. And again, there were different descriptors describing the ivory of my skin tone. So we had warm ivory, clear ivory, classic ivory, natural ivory, rose ivory, soft ivory, and light ivory. The last one was porcelain. Descriptors for porcelain, maybe it was just porcelain. It could have also been like cool porcelain, pink porcelain, beige porcelain, and light porcelain. If I went into a drugstore, I would know to be looking for like maybe fair, maybe ivory, maybe porcelain for like what I should pick out. Of course, if I have ivory and porcelain next to each other, I'm like screwed and I don't know where to go. And I don't know if I should really be looking for warm, light, pink, cool, soft, light, beige, you know. The descriptors really make it quite confusing because there's so much like crossover between the different descriptors. So I wasn't completely satisfied just looking at my own foundation descriptors. I was kind of curious about medium and darker skin tones as well. So if you look at the color IQ chart, kind of the inverse of my color from the bottom of the chart, so same undertone, just like same distance from the edge of the chart, would be 1R13. And they had 61 results on Sephora's website. And again, I kind of cross-matched with foundation to get a good idea of names of foundations. So their top foundation names were, I just got on my computer here, number 1, deep, and some of the descriptors included warm, dark, bronze, peach, cool, natural, red, golden, and extra. So if you had my undertones but your skin tone was much deeper, just like I had warm, cool, rose, if you have deeper skin tone, you could be golden, you could be red, you could be cool, peach, brown. Like the descriptors are not super helpful, but at the very least you might know to reach for like deep. The second most popular descriptor was cocoa, sometimes modified with like deep cocoa. And number 3 was chestnut. And for some reason, Tuscan chestnut came up quite often. So I don't know if Tuscan chestnuts are like a thing or not, but that's like a descriptor that could match this skin tone. And I also saw a ton of other nuts. So I've kind of heard, I don't know if it's complaints or just observations from like Reddit and like foundation sites that people with darker skin tones do have a lot of descriptors as foodstuffs. And while I didn't see a huge range of foodstuffs, at least on Sephora and foundation, there were a ton of nuts, which obviously count as foodstuffs. So hazelnut, nutmeg, walnut, cocoa is kind of like a bean. Cocoa, I don't know. I'm going to count it in the nut group because beans and nuts are like the same to me, even though that doesn't make any sense. And while my skin tone had not a lot of diversity in the names, usually it was fair, ivory, or porcelain, this deeper skin tone, 1R13, had a lot more unique names. So it was a little bit harder to like conglomerate them all into one list. And again, maybe it was because there were so many different nuts, there were like places. And I think part of that might be because if brands are coming out with new foundations now, there wouldn't be this like historical standard of names that people would label these skin tones, and brands are more free to come up with their like own names, own interpretations of like this skin tone, which I think is pretty interesting. But not completely satisfied with like looking at that, I also wanted to look at medium skin tones. So right between my skin tone and the 1R13 skin tone was 1R08. And there was 86 results for this skin tone. So if you're like a medium, you definitely have the most options to choose from. And I hate to tell you, but this was the most generic names, and this also had the most amount of descriptors. So number 1 in this skin tone, the most popular descriptor was beige. So unhelpful. And let me list the descriptors for you for beige. I'm going to read them off here. So you could have like medium beige, medium tan beige, ivory, neutral, natural, ochre. What the heck's ochre? Light, taupe. Taupe is like the worst word. Golden, almond, cool, porcelain beige, cream beige, honey, sunny, just sun beige, diaphane beige, sand, fresh, door, dark, deeply beige. So you could be porcelain beige, you could be deeply beige, and you would all match the same skin tone. That is crazy, and I feel really bad for medium skin tone people if you're going off of name alone. So after beige, what was the second most popular foundation skin tone? I wonder if you can guess for like a medium skin tone. That's right, it's medium. And I'm gonna list you off some of the descriptors for medium. So it could be cool medium, tan, neutral, light medium, warm medium, beige medium, olive medium, deep medium, honey medium, and peach medium. That's a lot of different mediums, or you could just like be medium. And the third most common descriptor I saw after beige and medium was natural. Do they mean like you're not tanned, but you're also not pale, so you're natural? Do they mean like your undertone? It's really confusing. And some of the descriptors I saw for natural were warm, beige, fresh, and tan. So no cool naturals, I guess. So again, very confusing. My revelation for this skin tone was that you had the least helpful descriptors as well as the most diverse adjectives. So maybe you wear a medium, but like you could have been anything inside the medium spectrum. So hopefully there weren't 2 mediums for you to pick from, because you could have been any medium. What does this little study mean? Again, if you're my skin tone, you're going to be fair, ivory, porcelain. I mean, that's a lot of like objects, right? That's a lot of minerals that you could be. So in my mind, I think back to like Greek statues. I think of Eurocentric beauty standards. You know, it's fair. Fair is often a very controversial word, because fair is ingrained in like looking well, like you look fair, she's a fair woman, she's a fair beauty, but it also does mean like lighter skin. So again, it's got some like iffy connotations to it. For the deeper skin tones, we had deep, cocoa, and chestnut. So again, lots of nuts, lots of foodstuffs, a lot of organic things, I would describe it as, a lot of like geography and places. And then the medium people, there's like really no hope for. Beige, medium, and natural, like you'll figure it out, I guess. Okay, and one of the weird things I noticed is between these 3 like shade extremes, there was a lot of crossover of the same adjectives to describe. So if you had light or medium skin tone, you would see vanilla, alabaster, beige, bisque, cream, linen, ecru, or buff, which is a lot of like strange adjectives to describe this, but doesn't matter your skin tone. Maybe something's probably named one of those things for you. You're probably somewhat familiar with hearing these things. If you had medium or dark skin tones, doesn't matter. You're probably going to see the adjectives golden, bronze, dark, honey, and almond throughout the spectrum. And no matter what skin tone you had, anywhere you might see neutral, which makes sense because like neutral undertone, natural, sand, warm, various foods, in part I think thanks to Huda Beauty bringing out her like food themes, but also I count like vanilla as a theme of food and cocoa as a food and almonds. So and also various place names. I think partly because of NARS, they have a lot of like geography in their ranges. All right, so let's set all that information aside for a second and just talk about some of the weird names that I might run into when I buy a foundation, and chances are you probably will too, because there's so much crossover between the foundation names. I looked up all of these just on Wikipedia, just kind of a lazy search, just to get a general idea of what these things are. And I will put a picture so you can kind of see what they look like. So starting with écru. Écru is French for raw or unbleached, and it's basically the color of unbleached linen or silk, a light beige, or they use the word fawn, which is interesting because fawn wasn't something that really came up in my search, although I'm sure there are some foundations called like fawn. Alabaster came up a lot, and alabaster is a mineral or rock that is soft and often used for carving. So again, going back to like minerals and objectification and like Greek statues. And apparently, according to Wikipedia, archaeologists use the word different from geologists. So, archaeologists use it to describe two different minerals, a fine-grained massive type of gypsum and a fine-grained banded type of calcite, whereas geologists only use alabaster as gypsum. So what is gypsum? According to Wikipedia, and I'm just reading this stuff without like fully processing it because I am not chemistry, geology minded. But it says, chemically, gypsum is a hydrous sulfate of calcium, while calcite is a carbonate of calcium. So basically, no matter what, they're both calcium. What is gypsum used for? It says it's widely mined and used as a fertilizer and as the main constituent of many forms of plaster, blackboard chalk, and wallboard. So oftentimes people that are fair make self-deprecating jokes that come off as like humble bragging or like being a pale princess, and they'll say something like, I'm as white as chalk, or I'm as white as like the wall behind me. And online is often regarded as like, yeah, sure, you're so pale, like we feel so bad for you, but like get over yourself. But looking back at the word alabaster as like a plaster as plaster or wallboard, like you can see where these jokes might come from, where you're literally the color of a wall. Okay, let's move on to bisque. So bisque, if you're an artist, you might be familiar with this, refers to a pottery that has been fired but not yet glazed. So it's often called a biscuit, and this can be a final product such as bisque porcelain, 2 keywords, or unglazed earthenware, often called terracotta, or most commonly the stage in between your fired product and your completely glazed product. Next we have buff, which a lot of medium skin tones had, but again, it was one of those words that you could kind of see throughout the spectrum. And I didn't know this, but buff is actually a specific color. So it says buff is the pale orange-brown color of the undyed leather of several animals. It is the color produced by an equal mix of the tertiary colors citron and russet. That's an actual color. So when they say buff, they mean an actual specific color, which kind of blew my mind. Like when I think of buff, I think of like buff people in the nude. I saw amber a lot, especially in the deeper skin tones, and I think we all kind of know what amber looks like, but amber as a descriptor, I'm not sure is super helpful other than like undertone, because amber is just fossilized tree resin, which has been appreciated for its color and natural beauty since Neolithic times, according to Wikipedia. It's often used in gemstones and in jewelry. Apparently there are 5 different classes of amber based on their chemical composition. So I think there's quite a diverse range of what amber actually looks like. It's not a tight description of like one color. And finally, ochre. Ochre is just such a strange word. According to Wikipedia, ochre is just straight up ancient Greek for pale, which is weird because I saw ochre in medium as well. But anyway, So it is a natural clay earth pigment which is a mixture of ferric oxide and varying amounts of clay and sand. It ranges in color from yellow to deep orange to brown. It is also the name of the colors produced by this pigment, especially a light brownish yellow. A variant of ochre containing a large amount of hematite or dehydrated iron oxide has a reddish tint known as red ochre. There you go. That is a look at some of these strange descriptors, strange adjectives, strange objects that foundations are named after. No matter what your skin tone is, you've probably ran into like these adjectives describing your foundations. So what I want you to do now, just for like the sake of experiment, is to grab your foundation. Maybe you have one foundation, maybe you have a couple, and just list the names of your foundations. Maybe you could give us an idea of your skin tone or your undertone, and then the names that you have in your collection that go with it. Are there any words that you have no idea what they actually are, like ochre or alabaster or ecru? I would love to know. You might have a completely different experience. Thanks to my patrons who help bring you this video content. They help pay for some of this makeup. They help pay for my time that goes into this research and my editing and equipment costs. So again, thank you guys very much. If you're interested in signing up to become a patron, I have a link at the end of the video. If you want to help support my channel in other ways, just share this video with anybody else who might find it helpful. If you are a YouTuber, maybe you could like do the same experiment, but like from your own perspective. I think it would be really interesting to hear what other like normal consumers have to say about what historically brands have labeled us as. And I would say in conclusion, adjectives, while you can see a pattern in adjectives and objects describing foundations, it really makes a lot more sense maybe not to go just to a straight number, like 100, 200, 300, but something like MAC, where you actually have like an undertone and a like level of depth to the skin tone to kind of like help give you a clear guide to where to search for, so that you know if you're like a 1N, you can like look around 1N, 2N. You can look in like that shade range, that little circle, versus looking at like porcelain, warm porcelain, light porcelain, dark porcelain, peach porcelain, olive porcelain. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but in the end, I think all foundations really do need to not only list a name and not only list a number, but also have some sort of system, especially in the drugstore where there's no testers always available. But give us an indication. Is this foundation neutral? Is this foundation cool? Is this foundation warm? Just like help us out a little bit. And don't make me in the store go to your website to like search around for it, because that's annoying. But anyway, that's probably a different video. So why am I still rambling? I've already done part of the closeout. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Make your own freaking video. And I will see you all in Wednesday's beauty video. Bye!